This looks like a good spot. I see a bunch of downed trees right there. And how was it for you guys in that big storm?
It was windy.
But our cabin stayed all good.
Yeah.
Good.
At 64, Eustace Conway has finally confirmed what fans have whispered about for decades. Known as the man who traded modern comfort for the harsh beauty of the wilderness, Eustace has always been a mystery, wrapped in simplicity. But this time, he's speaking openly, revealing the truth behind his lifelong mission, and it's far more personal than anyone imagined. From the way he built Turtle Island to the silent battles he fought away from the cameras, his confession leaves no doubt. The man who inspired millions with his rugged self-reliance was carrying a secret all along. Before we uncover what he finally admitted, make sure to subscribe, because this revelation changes everything we thought we knew about him. Long before this revelation, the signs were already there for those who paid attention. Visitors to Turtle Island often described Eustace as calm yet restless, a man whose eyes carried the weight of unspoken truths. Crew members from Mountain Men recalled how he'd pause mid-conversation, staring off into the forest as if listening to something no one else could hear. When interviewers pressed about his past or what drove him to abandon civilization, he'd deflect with a quiet smile. Locals in Boone, North Carolina, remembered whispers of family conflict, legal troubles, and land disputes that seemed to haunt him. Still, Eustace never spoke ill of anyone. He just kept building, chopping wood, and living by his code. Yet those closest to him began to notice patterns. He avoided cameras during certain days, kept journals no one was allowed to read, and talked about protecting something bigger than himself. Former apprentices have even said that Eustace would sometimes disappear into the forest for days without explanation, returning with a distant look and a notebook filled with sketches and cryptic notes. A few believed he was recording something more than just nature observations. Others whispered he was testing the land, measuring something only he understood. Even the way he managed Turtle Island changed subtly over time. Structures were moved, certain areas fenced off, and entire zones declared off limits. "He's not just living out here," one friend once said, "he's guarding something." Every small clue hinted that behind the calm voice and simple life, there was a deeper story, one that he wasn't ready to share. Until now. As Eustace's fame grew, so did the tension between his ideals and the modern world. What started as a peaceful refuge on Turtle Island soon became a battleground between his vision and society's regulations. Over the years, he faced countless inspections, zoning violations, and lawsuits, all because his way of life didn't fit into the world's rules. He once said, "Freedom doesn't exist on paper. It exists in the dirt under your feet," a statement that would later define his philosophy. Friends recall nights where he'd sit by the fire, staring into the flames, muttering that they'll never let people live free anymore. Local authorities accused him of operating without permits, while media producers pushed him to exaggerate his persona for better ratings. But Eustace resisted. He refused to fake the wilderness, even when it cost him contracts and partnerships. His battles weren't only legal, they were spiritual. Letters from old companions reveal how deeply the conflict cut him. In one, he wrote, "I'm not fighting for myself. I'm fighting for the right to live the truth." The more he tried to prove that harmony with nature was possible, the more he was misunderstood. His land became both sanctuary and symbol, a living rebellion against everything society demanded. Some claim that at his lowest point, he almost walked away from Turtle Island entirely, tired of the endless interference. Yet something kept him there, something he couldn't let go of. He told one close friend, "If I leave, the message dies with me." That message, whatever it was, became his unspoken vow. The man who appeared calm on screen was waging a private war for authenticity, truth, and the right to exist outside the system that tried to silence him. Behind Eustace Conway's weathered face and calm presence was a man carrying years of emotional weight most people could never imagine. To the outside world, he was the perfect embodiment of rugged freedom, a man who conquered nature and lived life on his own terms. But those who truly knew him said the solitude came at a heavy cost. Eustace had given up more than comfort and technology. He had given up connection. Over the decades, his dedication to Turtle Island consumed every part of his existence. He often said that the land never lies, but those who worked alongside him noticed that his eyes told a story of loneliness. He had no wife, no children, and few lasting friendships. Every visitor who left Turtle Island took a small part of his heart with them. Apprentices came and went, some staying only days, others months. But Eustace rarely let anyone close enough to understand what truly haunted him. There were times he'd spend nights alone by the fire, writing in his journals by lantern light. He recorded thoughts about the changing world, his parents, and his deep fear that humanity was forgetting how to live honestly. In one entry later discovered by a former student, Eustace wrote, "I built this place to remind myself who we were, but sometimes I forget who I am." Those words echoed through the hills like a confession whispered to the trees. He often spoke of his father, Eustace Sr., a strict man who believed in hard work and discipline. Their relationship had been strained, defined by admiration and disappointment. His father couldn't understand why his son rejected a life of education and comfort for dirt floors and hand-built cabins. Yet it was that very rejection that shaped Eustace into who he became, a man searching for truth through pain. 9. Another passage, he admitted. "I thought by leaving the world, I'd find peace. Instead, I found a mirror." Each storm that tore through Turtle Island felt like nature reflecting his own turmoil. The death of friends, the departure of apprentices, the constant fight with bureaucracy, all chipped away at him slowly. Yet even in his darkest moments, he never stopped building, never stopped teaching. His pain became his teacher, and through it, he found purpose. When Mountain Men cameras weren't rolling, he often sat on a log outside his cabin, staring into the woods in complete silence. Crew members said those moments could last hours. "It's like he was talking to something out there," one of them recalled. Whether it was nature, his memories, or his regrets, no one could tell. But one thing was certain. Eustace's silence spoke louder than words ever could. It was in that silence that he confronted the ghosts of his choices, the ache of isolation, and the unspoken truth that freedom can also be lonely. Deep down, he knew that the wilderness didn't just shape him, it revealed him. And that revelation, as painful as it was, would soon lead him to the moment he finally told the world everything he'd kept hidden. It was early 2024 when everything began to change for Eustace Conway. The quiet, deliberate man who had spent most of his adult life avoiding attention finally decided to open up about the truth behind his life's work. For years, people had speculated about his motives. Some believed Turtle Island was simply a survivalist's paradise, while others suspected it was a refuge from something darker. But what happened that winter morning during a private, off-camera interview with a documentary crew would shift everything we thought we knew about him. Eustace agreed to talk, not as a TV personality, not as a wilderness icon, but as a man who had finally made peace with his past. Sitting on a rough-hewn bench made from fallen cedar, he stared into the mist and said, "I didn't come out here to escape the world. I came here to understand it." Those words set the tone for what became one of the most revealing conversations of his life. The interviewer pressed gently, asking what he meant. Eustace took a long breath, his calloused hands resting on his knees. "People think I built Turtle Island to get away," he said. "But what I really built was a mirror for humanity." He explained that every lesson, every cabin, every student who came through his camp was part of a living experiment. He wanted to prove that people could still live freely, honestly, and in harmony with the earth, but he also wanted to see if anyone still had the courage to do it. Over time, he realized that most people didn't. They love the idea, he said, but they're afraid of the truth. The crew described a visible weight lifting off him as he spoke. For the first time, Eustace seemed ready to address the pain, the isolation, and the misunderstanding that came with his life's mission. He admitted that he had spent years battling guilt. Guilt for leaving behind people who loved him. Guilt for watching society decay while he hid in the woods. And guilt for staying silent while the world drifted further from nature. Every tree I cut, every roof I built, was a way to make peace with the fact that I couldn't save everyone, he confessed. He revealed that what finally pushed him to speak wasn't fame, money, or public curiosity, but fear. Fear that when he was gone, his message would die with him. "I've outlived some of the people I thought would carry the torch," he said softly, "and I realized that maybe it was never about them. It was about me finding the courage to tell the truth before it's too late." The wind howled through the trees as if nature itself was listening. He paused, looked toward the distant ridge, and said quietly, "People called me crazy for leaving society. But maybe I just saw what was coming before they did." That day, for the first time in decades, Eustace didn't hide behind metaphors or half-answers. He confirmed that his life in the wilderness was more than survival. It was his way of warning the world. "The land teaches you everything," he said, "but only if you're willing to listen." His tone carried both pride and sorrow. Pride in what he had built, and sorrow that so few had truly understood it. Those who were present said it felt like a chapter of history was closing right in front of them. From that moment on, Eustace wasn't just a mountain man. He became a messenger, finally ready to tell the story that had lived within him all these years. What came next would redefine his entire legacy, leaving even his most loyal followers stunned by what he finally revealed. When Eustace finally spoke the words that would change how the world saw him, there was a long silence after. He took a deep breath, looked toward the towering oaks around his cabin, and said, "I never built Turtle Island just for myself. It was never about isolation. It was about transformation." Those sitting nearby leaned in, unsure what he meant, but the expression on his face was unmistakable. Eustace wasn't confessing out of regret. He was revealing a truth that had lived inside him for decades. He explained that every inch of Turtle Island was built to represent something: the cabins for self-reliance, the land for humility, the wilderness for balance. He said he wanted to prove that humans could still coexist with nature without destroying it. "I wasn't running from society," he said firmly. "I was studying it." For years, Eustace had watched the outside world collapse under its own weight: pollution, greed, disconnection, and he wanted to show that another way of living was still possible. "People thought I was hiding," he continued, "but really, I was building an example, a living answer to everything that's gone wrong out there." It was then that the truth hit everyone listening. Eustace wasn't a hermit. He was a teacher. His entire life had been one long experiment in human endurance, spiritual growth, and ecological truth. He confessed that the idea for Turtle Island came not from rebellion, but from revelation. After spending time traveling the country in his youth, riding horses across states, sleeping under open skies, he saw how detached people had become from the natural world. "I watched people lose their spirit," he said. "They don't even notice the stars anymore." That was the moment he decided to dedicate his life to something pure, something untouched by the noise of the modern world. He called Turtle Island a living museum of truth, a place to remember who we were before comfort made us forget. He revealed that for over 3 decades, he's been recording every change in the land, every storm, every animal behavior, and even the subtle shifts in human behavior among his students. "Nature talks," he said. "You just have to listen long enough to hear it." The cameras captured a side of Eustace few had ever seen: vulnerable, emotional, but completely at peace. He looked into the lens and admitted, "People always thought I was hard to understand. That's because they were listening to my words instead of watching my actions." Then came the statement that confirmed what fans had always suspected. "Everything I did here, every piece of wood, every lesson, every struggle, it was never about surviving nature. It was about remembering how to be human." That single line sent shockwaves across the online wilderness community when the footage leaked. It reframed everything: the TV appearances, the rumors, the years of silence. Eustace wasn't retreating from the world. He was trying to rebuild it, one lesson at a time. And with that revelation, the mystery surrounding his life began to make perfect sense. After Eustace's revelation, the world began to see Turtle Island in a completely new light. What many once viewed as an eccentric off-grid project was suddenly recognized as one of the most profound environmental and philosophical experiments of modern times. Eustace explained that his vision was never just to survive in the wilderness. It was to rebuild a bridge between man and nature, one generation at a time. He confessed that over the years, hundreds of apprentices had passed through Turtle Island's gates, learning not only to carve wood and build shelters, but to unlearn dependence on the modern world. He had quietly built a network of students who carried his lessons back into cities, schools, and communities across the country. "They think the legacy is this land," he said, "but the real legacy is the people who remember." For decades, he had documented their growth: letters, photos, journals, all locked away in his cabin. When he finally opened those journals to the ET crew, they were stunned. Each page was filled with handwritten reflections, sketches, and even predictions about humanity's future. Eustace had chronicled everything: weather cycles, animal migrations, student behaviors, forming a detailed record of how the natural and human worlds changed over time. "This," he said, pointing to the pages, "is the proof that we can live differently." But Eustace also revealed something darker. He admitted that his mission had nearly destroyed him more than once. Years of financial strain, failed partnerships, and betrayals from those who misunderstood his purpose had left deep scars. He spoke of people who promised to protect Turtle Island, but instead tried to commercialize it, selling his image while twisting his message. "The world wanted a TV hero," he said bitterly, "but I was just a man trying to live honestly." At one point, the pressure became so unbearable that he considered selling the land entirely. But as he walked through the forest one evening, he said a single phrase stopped him cold. "The earth doesn't belong to you. It belongs to those who respect it." That night, he made a vow to continue, no matter the cost. He then revealed that, in the past few years, he had quietly begun training a select group of young people what he called the keepers, to inherit Turtle Island's mission. These were not television apprentices or volunteers. They were students chosen for their spirit, not their fame. "They're learning everything I know," he said with pride. "When I'm gone, they'll continue the message." His eyes filled with emotion as he added, "You see, I never built this place to last my lifetime. I built it to outlive me." Those words became the turning point of his legacy. The man once mocked for living in the past had, in fact, been preparing for the future all along. His story was no longer just about survival. It was about awakening. And as his truth finally came to light, even his harshest critics were forced to admit Eustace Conway had been right all along. As Eustace's words spread, fans and former students flooded social media with messages of gratitude and disbelief. The man they'd once seen as mysterious or distant had finally confirmed what they'd always felt. Eustace Conway wasn't just living in the wild, he was living for a purpose. In his next recorded message, his voice trembled slightly as he said, "I didn't do this for fame. I did this to remind people that we were never meant to be separate from the earth." He paused, looking around at the quiet forest behind him. "Everything we need to survive is already here. We've just forgotten how to listen." His confession struck a chord with millions. Former apprentices shared stories of how a single lesson from Eustace had changed their lives, how he taught them patience, respect, and gratitude for the smallest things. Some recalled nights by the fire when he spoke, about freedom not as an idea, but as a responsibility. "You can't be free," he'd say, "if you can't feed yourself or heal the land you walk on." That wisdom became his final message to the world. Self-reliance isn't about isolation. It's about reconnection. As he finished the interview, Eustace wiped a tear from his weathered cheek and smiled faintly. "I guess," he said, "what people always thought about me was true. I was never trying to live apart from the world. I was trying to show how we can live with it again." Those who heard him knew this wasn't just another statement. It was his life's philosophy, finally spoken aloud. And in that moment, the silence of Turtle Island spoke louder than any words could. When the cameras stopped rolling, Eustace sat quietly for a long time, staring into the fading light as if reflecting on every choice that had brought him there. For decades, the world saw him as a rugged hermit, a man cut from another time. But now they finally understood who he really was. "All I ever wanted," he said softly, "was to live truthfully." His confession was never about fame or redemption. It was about closure. He spoke of peace, not regret. "The wilderness raised me," he explained. "It showed me what people have forgotten. That life doesn't need to be complicated to be meaningful." He smiled faintly, his eyes glistening with both pride and sorrow. He knew his time in the spotlight was ending, but his message was just beginning. The shot that ended the interview showed him walking through the woods, hat in hand, disappearing into the same forest that had shaped his entire life. For Eustace, it wasn't goodbye. It was continuation. "If I've taught anyone anything," he said in his final words, "it's that the earth still speaks. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it." As the sun dipped behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, his silhouette faded into the trees, leaving behind not just a legacy of survival, but a reminder that even in silence, truth always finds a way to echo through the wild.